Hello and welcome to another game of Dota 2. Another high-level replay. This time makes a break from, well, a change from the last one where I casted my friends throwing a game. Most of it anyway. And this one should be fun. We have some notable pros. We have Pylai, V-Tune, some other people that were on the Dota 2 Pro Tracker that I don't actually remember the names of, but if we look at the drafts, the mid lane, we have a very magic damage heavy trade-off between the Leshrac and the Pugna, which could be quite interesting. Both seem like they have reasonably high kill potential, especially when we consider the rotations from the Dark Willow and the Rubik supports. Offlaner-wise, Axe and Bristleback, both very reasonably strong early game. Yeah, just generally strong laners. Have a good time. Little bit different in their position in the game, and we'll see how that plays out as time goes on. And then for the position 5s, we have Magnus, which is becoming a strong staple among at least pub play that I've seen. We have this Magnus plus melee carry, and that has seemed to be relatively effective because of the huge farming steroid it can give you. Not paired up with a PA this game, it is paired up with a Juggernaut, as we do have some just gentle trading around the runes, as you always expect. Don't think anyone has a huge amount of kill threat in this game around the runes, but we will see how it all breaks out. Speaking of kill threat, however, Tree is falling very low, has a few kills stacked up on him, just out of range of that last one, however, should keep him alive, though the lack of a salve might make it a little bit harder for him to regen back up, and it seems like Magnus has unfortunately managed to cliff himself and Axe at the same time and will be feeding away the first blood, but we'll survive. But speaking of Trey, he is the position 5 for the Dire side. Nice strong laner, especially combined with someone who can let him get more hits in, and the slows on Drow will absolutely allow that. A lot of slows stacked up, has allowed him to avoid going the Orb of Venom as a starting item. And for the carry matchup, we do have Drow versus Juggernaut. Both pretty strong carries at the moment. I would give Drow the edge in this game due to the lack of apparent catch and backline reach that the Radiant have, but Jug, if he gets ahead, and there's a good chance of that with the Magnus support, can be an absolute force to be reckoned with. I think I would give the edge overall to the Dire this game. They seem to have a much stronger draft through most stages of the game. I'd be most concerned in the early game, but late game they have the Drow as the insurance, and in the mid game they have Axe Leshrac to play around. Whereas Bristleback and Pugna are strong, but Bristle is a lot easier to deal with than the Axe. They lack a bit of that team fight control. And speaking of Bristleback being lacking, they will find a double kill in the top lane just due to the sheer amount of slow and damage that comes out with a quick early level 2, giving them the leech seed and the multi-shot that is required to apply that kind of pressure. Meanwhile, if we look at the mid lane, it seems very even for the most part, except for the fact that Pugna has managed to secure a few more last hits by nuking down the wave early. We'll see if Leshrac can catch him out. Nice split earth. Should allow him to get some of this wave, but Pugna forces it under the tower, making lasting a little bit more difficult. But overall, seemingly quite an easy matchup so far, but the Pugna does have more HP regen at the moment, allowing him to perhaps play a little bit more on edge and push that advantage, but we will remain to be seen. But down bottom, speaking of pushing an advantage, Jug seems to have managed to push the early level advantage into Axe's face and force him back out of lane on very low HP, and they might even pick up the Rubik here. Spin isn't up, so Rubik will be able to just lift and throw away. And no XP will actually be lost by the Dire side. They'll just end up having a little bit more on Rubik than you'd expect, which isn't terrible, but it isn't ideal either. You do want both of them to have a pretty good game, but Rubik's a greedy position 4. You can certainly do with worse. Meanwhile, up top, it seems like more and more harass is coming out of an incredibly strong Jur lane of the Tree and the Drow. Though, Tree has to be a little bit careful sitting on the HP he is. He has a massive lack of regen at the moment, having traded away most of it, just sapping some XP at the moment. Overall, it seems like Drow is having a pretty good lane, but Bristle isn't doing too badly, certainly. And down bottom, it seems like the Jug is having the best start of the game, having definitely dominated the early levels and been given the XP advantage by his Magnus, who, if we're honest, doesn't hugely benefit from them. Now, he chases down the Rubik for a surefire kill, but we will see if Axe can do anything about it. Doesn't have the call leveled yet, so isn't actually able to force a fight with it. He might just manage to pick up the Magnus with a lucky spin there, but no, just a little bit too little. And here's the level 4, here's the call, and there's a full, but no, doesn't get lucky enough with the spins. Is going to chase under tower. I don't actually know. Seems like it won't be going well for him. I don't know if the tower can proc spins, but perhaps that was what he was going for. But either way, that seemed a bit optimistic as a dive. Ordinarily, I would say this matchup would start to favour the... Ooh, nice TP out by the Bristleback, just on a tiny bit of HP. Just caught the very end of that, keeping himself alive. A lot of very on-the-edge situations so far that could have very much gone either way. And speaking of, it looks like mid lane might be heating up a little bit, as the Pugna finally starts to generate an advantage in the lane with that decrep. But the living armor does allow for quite a bit of sway in these side lanes. It's a very powerful ability, global heal. Not the biggest heal, but enough to have an influence. Either way, we will have... It remains to be seen how these lanes will end up getting changed. The Axe does manage to catch the Jug and Call, brought very low. No thing yet, but the Shockwave does not manage... Yes, I did have to check the ability name. I'm not perfect, or even very good, but won't manage to save him, as Magnus will attempt to go on the Rubik. Not quite manage to get away, thanks to the lift. Axe trying for that efficiency call, grabbing some neutral creeps to increase the proc number of spins, but manages to miss the Magnus off the back of it. But either way, I do expect this Axe to eventually be able to just force the Juggernaut out of lane. Melee heroes against an Axe always gets pretty dangerous, but it looks like they're going to go on him again. Do get quite a lot for only one spin. But I don't think Jug is going to mind too much about being forced out of lane if he is, because he does have that Empower steroid. Though it is always nice not to be. Either way, it seems as if mid lane has been dead even, but we finally have a rotation coming in from the Dark Willow, which could manage to bring the Leshrac down, but... One almost there, but he seems to be wanting to turn it around underneath the tower. The stun manages to break the suck from the Pugna just in time. A little bit unfortunate on the timing there, however... What an unfortunate turn of events. Nice play from the Leshrac will turn the gank, which actually gives them more time to put pressure on this Bristleback, who appears to have been completely forced out of lane, been made to go and try and efficiency out in the jungle, but the Tree apparently wants to sap whatever XP he can, but might have stepped up a little bit too far. You are only a Tree, and this Bristleback, he might be weak, but he's not that weak. Level 5 can still kill you quite easily. You're a slow bastard with a not as big HP pool as you might imagine for a stomp in about Grey Oak. Pugna, however, realizing mid isn't ideal, has decided to go and make some rotations around the map, and will find the Rubik and the Axe for his troubles. But as we know leaving lane is dangerous against either of these heroes, and it seems like Leshrac wasn't perfectly positioned to take advantage of it there, but had he been, that tower would be no more for sure. Both these heroes absolutely brilliant tower pushers. Very similar in a lot of aspects, these two. So it is no surprise that the lane has gone even, though that rotation from the Pugna seems to have allowed the Leshrac to start to build up an advantage in the CS front. All positions, however, if we look at the net worths, are going pretty evenly, but the kills on the Pugna have managed to put him a little bit ahead, and we might see the Rubik brought down once again. Magnus has everything he might need, but doesn't get the skewer back. Now both supports moving towards the mid lane, and the Drow is here as well. Has the multi-shot, which does go through the Dark Realm, but not enough damage to really make an impact. Leshrac, meanwhile, is taking the top lane. Probably feels it isn't too difficult for him to handle this Bristleback. As we see, he's just getting a run down. The magic damage of the Leshrac just too much for the Bristleback to handle. He's much better against physical damage, and it seems like the silence from the Drow and the help from the supports is enough to bring down the Pugna in the mid lane as well. Very successful lane swap, and we should see that offlane tier 1 falling to the Leshrac post-haste. Does have maxed out Diabolic Edict, but he decides not to commit to the tower, surprisingly, despite seeing most of them on the map. The only concern now for the Dire is this axe going to get caught out? But no, he seems to choose the path correctly and dodges the two supports as they start to rotate down. Incredibly even game. The only real difference you can see is that the Bristleback has been heavily bullied, to the point where if we look at the level difference between him and Axe, there's a full level in it, as well as almost 500 gold. Otherwise, everyone is very close to each other. But we should start to see, now everyone has their ults, everyone's starting to get those early small items. We should see some fun moves coming out. Though, and both teams have the potential, as we can see right there, to make moves happen early game. Nice Dark Willow gank will just blow up a very squishy Leshrac. But down bottom, another gank blows up, kills the Juggernaut at the same time. Almost mirrored movements in many ways. Hard to say who really comes out ahead there. I don't think it hugely matters, but it looks like the Dire will actually start to press on towards this tower if they get the opportunity. No one is there to defend it. And they have a catapult, so it could be what breaks the game wide open. Meanwhile, Leshrac is trying to defend that top lane against the Bristle, having taken the offlane tower. Missed that one, and a big skirmish in mid. As it seems like the Radiant want to use how split the Dire are to try and get this tier 1, and they will. Hard to say who really wins that trade. Tower for tower. And Leshrac went for a kill on Bristleback and didn't actually manage to pull it off, which is a little bit unfortunate. The only slash committed, but the stolen decrypt will manage to kite out the whole duration. Well played by that Rubik there. A bit careless from the Juggernaut not to be checking the stolen spells before he goes, and Axe manages to make a quick TP just before the Willow's Bramble manages to catch. Even actually went off as he left the TP. Came right down to the wire there. Game's starting to slow down. They really want, on the Dire at least, to try and get this Blink Dagger and this Duels finished up for the Leshrac before they really start fighting. Hurricane Pike is finished for Drow. Meanwhile, and Tree is in fact going Meteor Hammer, which is a bit of an interesting item. I've heard it disparaged to some extent by some of the best players, but Pylai Die is one of them. So it is interesting to see that item coming out. Wonder exactly what he's going to put, but it's useful because his team certainly doesn't lack push or D-push in any respect, which is what I was under the impression that item was used for. Now, what does Magnus have on Courier? Nothing. He's a position 5. Oh well. I can but dream. Vanguard finished up on the Bristleback, so he will be a little bit harder for them to deal with, but a lot of the early game damage and mid game damage, as we're really moving into now on the Dire, is not physical. only Drow is really going to be dealing that out. Everyone else is going to be doing either pure or magical. So Vanguard isn't perhaps the right play. Everyone in the map congregated around this safe lane tier 1 tower, but Radiant catch a whiff of something they don't want and manage to leave. Axe has that Blink Dagger finished, and the Yule's also done now, so they'll definitely be looking for a fight and with the smoke, and it looks like they will be getting one. Blind Call from the Axe doesn't actually catch, which puts the Dire in a really bad position. RP onto just the Leshrac, but it doesn't really matter. He puts out damage whether he's stunned or not, and it brings down the Magnus almost immediately. Axe caught on the back lines, sucked up and put in the grave. Leshrac going to full split Earth, doesn't catch, and he's brought down as the Radiant try and fall away on very low HP, managing to get out of there, perhaps stemming the casualties just barely. And it does look like they will escape with the majority of their lives, just barely. And I said that, yeah, that wasn't my greatest hour of casting, was it? But impressive maneuvers by the Radiant there to get themselves out of a bit of a sticky situation. And the same for the Dire, who did not get the initiation they wanted out of that. Unfortunately, Axe blew his load a bit too quickly. And it looks like they're going to go back for more. They stayed up in that triangle area, and the two who died before look to not have had enough of the fun. Magnus getting picked off instantly, has to stick around the Juggernaut, who does obviously want to farm what is supposed to be the safest area of the map, and it has quite a lot of farm in it too, that triangle. And speaking of getting caught out of position, Rubik seemed to have been trying to slip away or check the rune spot, and is found and brought down. Axe goes for a call on the Juggernaut, but it seems to be a little bit mistimed, as the Pugna is there to save. And then he's just spun and brought down. Pugna starting to really show his stuff at this point in the game. Being in all the right places at all the right times, keeping his team alive and crushing the enemy. Tree getting very close to finishing up that Meteor Hammer now, trying to keep these lanes pushed out and create pressure on the map when the rest of his team does not want to be there. And it certainly doesn't hurt him picking up a lot of farm. Certainly doesn't hurt, especially if it would go to be only really if it would be going to waste otherwise, and it would be. That's key. You don't want to be stealing farm from anyone who's actually going to take it as a position 5. But if it's just sitting there, I mean, it'd be rude not to, wouldn't it? I think the Dire are starting to feel the irritation of still having this mid-tier 1 standing. It gives Radiant quite this strong position on the center of the map that they don't have. Side lane towers are nice, but the mid lane tower definitely has a lot of impact, and that's why they're going for this play right now. They chunk it down quite heavily. But the fortifications committed to stop the Diabolic Edict from being truly terrifying, and Drow stepped up a little too far, but the Axe is there to come in. Silence should stop the Decrypt coming in, and the Fear's too late to save your Pugna. Rubik, both supports very far behind this tower are in a dangerous spot. Axe jumps in, but doesn't really manage to catch much, and the RP's cancelled out by the Yules. Very good timing. Split Earth to follow up. Can they find both? Pugna has brought back. Tries to go on the Axe, but the Wand will keep him safe. RP onto the Leshrac, but once again, Leshrac doesn't need to be conscious to make plays. Axe jumps in just a little too far once again. Gets punished for it. Tree going to die, and it's just a matter of time, but can the Rubik get out of there? It looks like he might if he can duke out the last bush, and he does, but slow might be enough to bring him down, and will, and it wouldn't be too big of a surprise to see them transition straight into a tower push or a Roshan off this. What looked to be a very good fight from the Dire, quickly turning around thanks to a Pugna buyback, and perhaps, I'm not sure if it was a bit of a sloppy spellcasting issue or just staying a bit too long, but either way, greed was their unbecoming, as they are put into a much more difficult position just off the back of that. might be an idea now for them to try and get their next set of items out and just play the split push game, which they're very good at. They have a Treant and a Leshrac who has bots completed, and their tower defense isn't bad. They have plenty of heroes who are good to stand behind towers and plenty of heroes who are good at pushing waves. But one of those heroes is apparently very squishy, as he is brought down once again by this Pugner, who is trying to match the mobility of the Leshrac, buying his own boots of travel. This game feels like it's going to be all about who can apply the most pressure around the map and really abuse map control and creep waves more than the other team. Treant desperately trying to defend this tier 1, but living armor is no match for a Pugner Blast. As Leshrac standing around this tier 2, probably looking to, I don't know, make a play of some description. As they did actually finally manage to snipe this mid tower. Finally managed to snipe the mid tower while they were occupied taking the tier 1. So it's not terrible for them at all. Axe tries to catch up the Pugner, who is silenced. This should be him getting killed, unless the one can keep him alive just long enough. It can't. The Gust being absolutely lethal to the bony green boy. He should expect to see a defensive item coming out soon ready to deal with that, but no, he's going to go for the Dagon double down. And perhaps just hopefully try and catch off this Drow and instantly kill her before that silence can really come out. It's a good item, definitely, going burst Pugner this game. It definitely feels good. There's 3 squishies, 2 of them are very important cores, and Rubik's never a bad catch. Especially when you have big teamfight spells like RP. However, it is a concern because it relies on your positioning being quite good. And that's not a guarantee, as we see the tree getting caught out, trying to do tree things and keep the lane pushed. But that's a difficult one. Rubik behind enemy lines with an Invis rune to pick up their bounty. And looks like they might be tricked into thinking a Roche attempt is going to happen, but it is at the moment just Bristleback. We'll see if there is a response. Shouldn't be too concerned about it being tree. Maybe they'll try and wait for the Axe Blade Mail, but it might be too late. The minus armor from the Nasal Goo is making this a very, very quick move. And there's no way they're going to be there in time to contest. Leshrac on the wrong side of the map as well. And Roche will actually fall for free, uncontested, as the smoke does come in. Maybe they'll look for the find off the back of it. They saw the smoke come out. Both teams know something's up. Roche straight into a smoke, but it looks like because the Bristleback was popped and they know the other team knows something is up, it will be abandoned. Axe consistently missing those really key calls as the Leshrac gets Omni Slash, but manages to Yule's dodge the rest of it, but gets RP'd really early in the fight. This time, he doesn't actually manage to have the impact you'd like to see as the Axe gets brought down once again for quite a shit initiation. Frankly, you cannot keep missing your initiations on Axe. That's your impact in these fights. And Bristleback as well isn't really the target you want to go on, as looks like Juggernaut has Swift Slash completed, as he vaporizes Rubik in a hail of blades with only a 15-second cooldown. And this game is looking decisive at the moment, but that I don't mean to count the Dire out yet. They have a strong team, and team fighting is always a possibility, as well as split push. They could stall this game, or they could find that one big fight, that one perfect Axe call into the Overgrowth, into just Drow raining hell. It's always possible. But at the moment, Radiant have a stranglehold on this game, and we will have to wait and see what happens. They'll probably be waiting out the Aegis, and just trying to play keepaways for the moment, though. And the Pugna did in fact decide to change it up and go for the Yules instead, and finally they managed to actually catch the Pugna. And that should be enough. Fear is dodged out, but this is a rough position to be in. Maybe with the sheer damage, but no, with the tier 3 tower there's not much chance of Leshrac surviving this. Finds the Magnus on the back line as well, but ooh, maybe just with the end of the multi-shot, no. Dark Willow will survive, and the 2 cores will go down for that. Not ideal, really. You expect to go a little bit better against that when you find the pick really early, but now Jug might be out of position, can't get away from this, and the Aegis pops, but they need to do it again. So Rubik with the Stolen Healing Ward should keep them all fighting fit, and TP perhaps used a little bit early. Jug they have the Gust back up, and Jug will be brought down. TP used whatever, I have words, they don't really work very well. But that was a clean double kill on the Juggernaut, perhaps, and that really does actually make the whole play from the Leshrac and the Axe completely worthwhile. You think, when you first look at it, oh, it's just a massive int play. And perhaps it was, but it resulted in the Jug being very isolated and his team not being in a position to help him. Much like the Bristleback feels like he is in right now, as he's caught by the Axe on the edge of the Meteor Hammer, almost manages to incinerate Rubik. But we will see if they can actually punish him for this. It is going to require Drow Ranger turning up, and well, it's always quite scary when you have a ranged carry beating into the back of a Bristleback, and what call after call after call actually lands on this Bristleback, and he will get executed in the end. So a little bit of mispositioning here. You've got to be careful on that Jug. The Triol does mean spin isn't a perfect defense mechanism, and you also have the Axe Call. And then your Bristleback running it down. Well, in many ways, yes, that is what the hero kind of does, but also not like that. You want to provide something for your team when you do it. The pauses start to come in, and I will just I'll fill for this one. We have the blink actually up on the POS 5 Magnus now, so this is where the game gets spicy, because now your POS 5 can have massive impact in the team fights, which he already was to some extent, landing pretty consistent RPs on key targets, though often RPing a Leshrac isn't perfect unless you can burst him down really quickly, because that hero just does damage by existing.
The true heroes are the ones who went all the way.
Though we have seen this Magnus Jug build really skyrocket this Jug's farm. 14k at 25 minutes is monumental, crushing the Drow by 2k net worth, and really allowing those early items to come out. We saw the impact of a fast Swift Slash just a minute ago around that triangle fight and the chase afterwards. Very powerful. And it looks like the Magnus is back, and the game will continue on now. As the map starts to once again get sort of mirrored out by the two teams moving into the opposing jungle at roughly the right time. And it is definitely anyone's game. But it still feels like Radiant hold the advantage. They have the more commanding position on the map, but that could change at any time, especially as if they base race, it's almost guaranteed that the Dire will win thanks to the Leshrac. Pugna is very good at pushing towers, however, and the Jug is no slouch either. But we are unlikely to see that. Both Titu's falling at the same time. Maybe they will. It remains to be seen who is going to go to defend first. It looks like the Dire will make some TPs back. And the tree is here as well. The Meteor Hammer not quite connecting. Tree is not there. Somebody else's Meteor Hammer. Who has a Meteor Hammer? Dark Willow does, in fact. And an Overgrowth traps the Bristleback in the base, continually stunned up, but heals from the Pugna, and just the constant just Quill Spray from getting pounded in the back. Blink RP on the Magnus. Doesn't manage to skewer the Drow quite to the low ground, but close enough perhaps. No. It isn't enough. Leshrac pushing forward. And oh, what a steal and a setup by that Rubik. Catches 4 in the RP. What a play. Absolutely turning this game on its head. 5k. 5k net worth swing. Almost. And just domination.
Radiant's middle tower is under attack.
Absolute brilliant play from that Rubik. Perfectly timed. Just allows them to completely clean up the fight and could even force some buybacks here. Though it's likely they'll want to hold on to it. No Diabolic Edict for a couple of seconds, but this tier 3 is going to fall. No question about that. Just look how quickly it melts, like hot butter knife analogy. And they play it safe. They back off. They back off, and you already see the Dark Widow drawing the map, probably also saying something like, we should control this area because Roshan. That's my guess, anyway. And we do actually see a Ghost Scepter on that Drow. That's a nice little switch up in the itemization. You don't you don't normally think E-Blade Drow, but Ghost Scepter's very good this game. The only real magical damage threat is that Pugna, and it is a major threat, but you have the Hurricane Pike to break what he throws on you. And it will allow you to just, if you get caught out and Omni Slashed, it allows you to just ignore it. It's great.
Eager to know Dire's whereabouts.
A lot of Blink Daggers this game. Seems like everyone is all the supports are going for one except for Dark Willow. And we even, so 4, in fact, 3 on the Radiant. 3 Blink Daggers. That's almost 7k gold in just Blink Daggers. Which is quite something. But we do have, we are starting to see some aura items coming out on the Bristleback, which could heavily mitigate the Drow's damage. Little bit curious to know why he went Crimson, not Halberd. I feel like there is only one major right-click source on the Dire side, and that is better handled through a Halberd than through anything else. Obviously, the Manta wouldn't matter. It's not something you can dispel. But perhaps it's just easier to set up. And speaking of setup, what a quick combo! The call onto 3 followed up by the RP will kill both supports immediately. Buyback is committed, and a Swift Slash to try and get Jug out of danger doesn't manage to do much. And while the Split Earth misses, the call is there, and the Jug will get quickly brought down. Pugna having to beat a quick retreat, might just get caught by a quick blue horse, but doesn't manage to. Now it's just the Dark Willow and the Bristleback fighting for their lives. Dark Willow diebacks, in fact, and Bristle is caught in the middle of everyone. Only Axe dying so far. Maybe somebody dies to the end of the Quill Sprays, but no, the Rubik's healing up through it, so there's no threat of his death. And that's a very nice 4K. Set up by the Axe actually lands, as opposed to when we saw that play earlier where he missed by a country mile, and this time your Rubik still had Blink RP, which he had very intelligently saved from the last fight, and that's just, it's so hard to come back. Most of your control gets annihilated immediately, and your carry gets put on such low HP he has to run. And now they go straight into the Roche bit, which is going to mean even if you kill this Drow once, twice is far less of an option. And actually the Leshrac takes it, which kind of makes sense. He's definitely more at risk than the Drow, who tends to stay in the backline and has plenty of methods of escape. Whereas Leshrac needs to get right in the middle of the party, being the Disco Pony. And a Yule Scepter and a BKB are good, but you can still get kind of murdered pretty easily. You're not the tankiest in the world. And now the Dire start to really swallow up the map. They've started to infest the opposing side and restrict them as best they can. keep all the waves pushed in. That is very important. The more pushed in the waves are, the more vision you have, and the less vision they have. And that just makes it so much easier for the winning side to play. And try and find people to get caught out, much like Dark Willow might be here. Axe lands the call, tries to drag back, and that's just 4 people appear out of nowhere, and there is a decrep. But HB getting given from Pugna to Rubik there in a long chain. And Drow Ranger almost blown up by the Pugna combo, but not quite enough. That item build giving her quite a bit of health, more than you might expect on a usual Drow. Hurricane Pike is a really good item, and the Ghost Scepter doesn't hurt. It's good, man. It does a lot of health on that bitch. And they start off the fight by dragging in Leshrac, but you got to remember he does have an Aegis, and Swift Slash is committed, so they should have the Omni Slash up for when they respawn, if they want to go for it. But it looks like Bristleback will be dead by then. Has no buyback, and the Omni Slash is, let's not say wasted, but used up on the axe. And the cheese, just when they think the Drow is going to die, the cheese gets used. The RP is now used on the Drow as well. They just want to kill her, and they can't. Another Manta to break the life drain. They keep going for her, and she keeps getting just kept healthy. RP is stolen once again by Rubik as well, though he doesn't actually have any mana to do anything with it right now. But when he does, you can be almost assured that a big play will be coming out. They don't manage to get the tier 2, actually, off the back of that tier 3, off the back of that fight. But it's going to get repair kitted up, but I suppose that's charges a repair kit down. That's buybacks all across the board. How many are left? Just none. Nobody has buyback on the Radiant. And it will be just one more of them, and that game is over. Yes, it cost them an Aegis, it cost them cheese, it cost them everything they had on the Dire, but they come out so far ahead. I think they only lose the axe in that whole fight. It looks like, yeah, they only lost the axe, and that is the person who goes as hard as possible and puts himself in the most danger. And they still had to commit the Omni Slash. Not the Swift Slash, the full Omni Slash, even though he was all the way behind the set of racks. But now we could see the game slow down as they wait for another Aegis, or we could see them start to really push ahead with their 14k net worth lead. Although those waves the Treant farmed starting to come in very clutch, or very useful, as it looks like they're just smoking their smoke, because if you double smoke you're even safer. I'm sure that's how it works. And it seems like they have an idea of where the Bristleback is, but they don't really care. They want the juicier target. They find the Pugna or the... And they do find the Pugna. Oh my, he just vanished. And now the fight started. Swift Slash committed on the axe, who is trying to just get out. Doesn't quite land the call. And there's an RP, but doesn't look like it actually caught on to much. But it doesn't matter. All of the key players of the Radiant are dead. And the rest are sure to follow, and they're just going to ignore the Bristleback because it's just not worth their time. And that should be the game. Ultra kill for the Drow. And 60 seconds to just wail on buildings. There's not much hope, I don't think, for much to happen here. They do waste a repair kit charge, just prolong it, and that leads to the Bristleback getting caught out. I'm surprised they're even bothering. But just for completion's sake, I suppose, they do wipe the team in the end as they move on to the last tier 4, and then will throne the Radiant in short order. Nice, well played, very disciplined, and a good comeback from the Dire.